You are tuning in to the Pop Culture Retrospective Podcast.
This show is dedicated to the memory of my big sister Rebecca, who is a fan of all things pop culture, particularly the people, places, and trends that defined the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. Welcome aboard this pop culture time machine. I'm Amy Lewis, and this is episode number 106, a conversation with John Kinsner and his dream of reviving the cult classic film Labyrinth. John is a fellow child of the 80s and 90s, and he is the creative mind behind this beloved movie's resurrection, complete with an accompanying live band. It looks absolutely incredible. What I initially thought would be a discussion solely focused on Kinsner's latest project, which would have been totally understandable and so much fun regardless, turned into a delightful conversation about his childhood, his love for movies and music, and the fascinating creative process involved in his art. I learned a ton about Labyrinth in concert and just how hard John had to work to see his dream come to fruition. He's just a really cool person. Like, I would totally be friends with him and hang out with him like so many people that have been on the show. And I just loved hearing about his story as well as his brilliant work. John was an absolute joy to chat with, and I think you will enjoy our conversation as much as I enjoyed putting together this episode. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of the Pop Culture Retrospective Podcast. All right. Thank you so very much for tuning into the Pop Culture Retrospective Podcast. My name is Amy Lewis, your captain aboard this pop culture time machine, which I begin every show with and have for the last 5 years. But this evening, I am very excited. I am joined by Mr. John Kinsner, who is the Chief Executive Officer, co-owner, and visionary founder of Black Ink Presents, a leader in turnkey solutions for music performances and experiential entertainment, including live-to-film shows, which we're going to be talking about here in a second, where a full orchestra or band performs in sync with a film or other media. John's lifelong interest in David Bowie's Labyrinth led to the collaboration with the Jim Henson Company to produce Jim Henson's Labyrinth in concert, a 30-city North American tour launching last fall, September 24th, 2024, on Jim Henson's birthday. That's a perfect timing for that. The entertainment industry veteran pursues his passion for storytelling through music, events, and media. He has worked on, produced, and developed tours for Live Nation, AEG, Sony Masterworks, Fifth Season, Williams Morris Endeavor, CAA, and Disney. I'm a big Disney nerd wearing my Epcot sweatshirt right now. With an early history of making bootleg mixtapes, totally did that for his friends, and working in arena operations, starting at the age of 16. It's no surprise that John has emerged as one of the most skilled producers and creatives in the industry. Over the past 20 years, John has produced, created, and managed a multitude of full-scale tours, galas, world premieres, media shoots, red carpet events, and awards shows. He has worked on collaborations with Disney Concerts, Sony, Paramount, NBCU, Danny Elfman, Elton John, Dick Clark Productions, Live Nation, and the Academy of Theatrical Arts and Sciences. That is a very impressive resume. John, thank you so much for coming. Welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, wow, what a mouthful. Like when you look back, you're like, wow, I did that.
Yeah.
Man, thank you so much. Like I'm jazzed to be here.
Yeah, well, this has been exciting, and kind of been working on putting this together, and this is very, very excited to be doing this. And so, before we get into, this amazing show that you've put together, which is all around, based on the Labyrinth, the classic, cult classic Jim Henson film from 1986. Can you tell the audience what was your first experience like watching that film as a child, I'm assuming, or maybe
definitely
or...
as a child. The film came out in 86. I was 4 years old, and it was probably like 89 or 90. My mom got it on like a bargain bin VHS. For those of us that are old enough to remember Blockbuster videos and Hollywood videos, after they had kind of gone through their copies of the rental films, or there wasn't so much demand for them anymore, they would like put a lot of them like on bargain bin discount and sell them for like $4, $5, $6, something like that. And so we would always like rummage through those and get some stuff. And it had some like interesting results, right? Like one time we bought Top Gun and a bargain bin.
Yep.
And then got it home and realized the whole thing was dubbed in Spanish.
It's a crapshoot, those boxes.
Yeah. And so Labyrinth was one of those. My mom was a big Bowie fan. You know, she was a big, 70s and 80s rocker. And so I definitely got a lot of my personality from that. But she, we were huge Fraggle Rock fans, my brothers.
Oh God, yes.
And Fraggle Rock for the Henson Company, Fraggle Rock and Sesame Street, like dominated the 80s. Yeah. And so she was aware that like anything in the Henson world was probably for kids,
Sure.
And so she saw Bowie and Henson and she's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get this for my kids. Yeah. And so, it was probably, like 7, 8, or 9, maybe, like when I first sat down and watched it. And just like Fraggle Rock did to us at that time, like this film just transported me, like from the very first moment, when you're seeing the owl and you're watching Sarah fight with her parents and, kind of be a teenager who was, at that time, I was just starting to kind of understand that those teenage dynamics with the parents would exist or become a thing. And so I was just fascinated with it. And I've always loved musicals, and again, in the late 80s, I was glued to MTV, and so I was really familiar with like musicals and musical format and music videos. Yeah. And in a way, each Bowie song in Labyrinth is kind of like a mini musical video.
Totally. Yes.
And so from just the jump off of the very first time I watched it at home on VHS, I was just absolutely enamored, and that never went away, and as I got older, I fell in love with things like Rocky Horror Picture Show, and I would, later go on to like see like my first Broadway productions, and all of this DNA just like really ingrained into me.
Wow. Yeah. Isn't it funny how just these childhood experiences and things that we get exposed to can really stick with us, and it sounds like, from an early age is kind of like set in your mind that, music and musical movies and musicals in general would have an impact on you. And that's
totally,
that's pretty awesome. Yeah.
And, and for those of us that were there and old enough to remember, androgyny was like a big thing in the late 70s and through the 80s. And absolutely. I was really fascinated with it, even as a kid. I was, whether it was Freddie Mercury or it was David Bowie, or even if you're looking at, like Poison or Motley Crue, or the hair bands. Sure. Androgyny was just like really big. And so this character of Jareth like embodied all of that. Yeah. And even as a kid, like I loved Poison, and like CeCe DeVille was like my favorite guitar player. And I loved Tommy Lee. And, as a kid, you don't kind of understand like the broader spectrum of like what they're doing outside of what you see on MTV. But I was just like, man, this dude's a rocker. I love it. Yeah.
Well, that's so cool. I love that you were just already, as a child, already kind of just open-minded and, into things that were different and sort of, I can certainly appreciate that. And David Bowie was just, I think, the top tier, at just opening the doors for people and kind of being who he was and being accepted. And, he was such an advocate for other musicians. I really just adore everything that he sort of stood for. So makes sense.
And maybe it's just like a uber fan, or maybe I've watched the movie too many times, but it's like when you watch him perform in this role, you get the sense that, like he is like a creation of Sarah's mind, and he's a creation of like all the things that she's going through in her life at that moment. But just the aura of David Bowie, you got the sense that he's like a loving, caring person. even
Yeah.
though his character didn't really portray that or wasn't supposed to.
Sure.
But I just think that that's just like the aura of who he was as a person, and that really just was like impossible to hide with wig and makeup and wardrobe or whatever. Like, I don't know,
Yeah.
there was something that's always just felt like very comforting
Mhm.
about him specifically, and even
Yeah.
in this role.
Yeah. Yeah, and I will say grew up watching a ton of Jim Henson stuff. I've done shows on different Jim Henson stuff, and we'll do other stuff in the future. But I feel like Labyrinth was always sort of on kind of in the background. I don't know if I ever really truly sat down and absorbed it as a kid. So I watched it again recently, kind of thinking this is going to be, this is going to be interesting. It's, from 1986. How's this going to kind of feel as an adult? It's been so long since I've really like sat and watched it, and it really held up so much better than I was expecting. I think I had sort of like one of those moments where I was thinking something that seems sort of interesting to you as a kid, and then you watch it as an adult, and you're like, oh dear God, how did I
Right.
sit through this as a kid? But actually watching, like, this is so much better than I was expecting it to be. And no wonder this is has such a following, and people adore this movie. My wife has owned it forever, and we've never like sat down and watched it together. And I was just really just taken aback and how well that it stood up, and even like the special effects did not feel like it was 1986. I mean, it was just done so well on so many levels.
Yeah.
And then having, David Bowie be in the, kind of the lead role was just such a beautiful combination of like combining two geniuses together.
You bring up an interesting point, and if you look at this film from just like a history of cinema snapshot,
Yeah.
Being made in 1986, it was at like the peak time of physical prop making and physical sets.
Yes.
And so you have just phenomenal sets and phenomenal physicality to the sets and depth and dimension to them.
Yes.
But at the same time, the CGI owl that's in this film is the first ever representation of a CGI animal in the history of cinema.
Right.
And so you have this conversion of two eras of filmmaking that actually converge very brilliantly in this film.
Yeah.
And I'm always like amazed and awestruck by that this is one of the films where you see, those two eras and those two times like kind of touching.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I agree. Yeah, it's certainly on the cusp of major changes happening with how movies are put together at this point. And I was also just, as I was watching, was thinking these sets and these, characters are better than anything I've seen on CGI. I mean, really, like it just
true.
Again blew me away, and it's, almost a 40-year-old movie. So just such a testament to what an amazing
I'd love to
production
go
was.
back and take a peek at what the glitter budget was on this film.
Oh geez, that's so true. Yeah, what line was that on? That would be interesting. Maybe you've got some connections. You can figure that out somehow, because that would be very intriguing.
Yeah, maybe Henson has it in the archives. Like, can we see the line budget?
That's true. That would be fascinating. I would, if there was like a tour that involved them describing that and going over it, I would sign up immediately, because that would be fascinating. I love stuff like that, the kind of behind the scenes stuff that people don't know.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So clearly, you've had a love of this film for decades, at this point. And so how did that evolve into this incredible show?
So, as I embarked out on my career, I was like, I was touring and doing production management for artists and for venues, and just like a very straightforward, music artist way, as many do. And I very like suddenly and unexpectedly found myself in this film concert space in 2013. I helped some producers put together a show for Tim Burton and Danny Elfman, which was a great show, and it still tours today. And we put it together in Los Angeles and premiered it. And it was basically a show that, showed 13 suites of Tim's films paired with 13 pieces of Danny's music from those films.
Wow.
We had an orchestra, and we had the visuals, and we had some of Tim Burton's storyboard art. And it was like a really beautiful display of the whole process and the partnership between the two of them.
Yeah.
we toured it for several years, and we actually did a PBS broadcast with it on Halloween one year from Lincoln Center in New York.
Oh my
And
gosh.
the broadcast actually ended up winning 2 Emmy Awards, which was just amazing.
Oh my God.
I was like, really? Like, this is amazing.
Yeah, it is. My gosh. Wow.
And so that was like a fantastic team. It was Danny's management and a company out of New York called Columbia Artists Music that was being run. That department was being run by a guy named Tim Fox and a dear friend named Allison Williams. And as that project picked up steam, Danny had the idea. He said, well, this is great.
Mhm.
And the finale of that show was him coming out on stage and singing the Jack Skellington parts from Nightmare Before Christmas live.
Oh my God.
And in sync with those clips.
There must not have been like a dry, there must not have been like a dry eye in the room. My goodness, that must have been
people
unbelievable.
Lost. Like, people would lose it at that moment, right?
I bet. Oh my gosh.
And because right before it, we did Ice Dance from Edward Scissorhands, which is just a beautiful piece of music. So people are already kind of misty-eyed. And then Danny comes out and does, What's This and Jack's Lament and, all of the songs that everybody knows from The Nightmare Before Christmas. And it will just like bring down the house.
Yeah.
So we were performing it in Tokyo, and Danny had the idea. He said, one day, and it was crazy. It was like right after the show, he ran into his dressing room. He's like, I need the producers all to come in here. And I'm like, cleaning up the stage and working with the stage crew and getting things cleaned up. Cause I'm not a producer yet at this point. I'm just part of I'm the technical manager and the production guy. And he talks with his management and with Tim and Allison. And he's like, let's just do The Nightmare Before Christmas in its entirety, start to finish. I'll come out and sing. We'll bring Catherine O'Hara out. We'll bring Paul Rubens out. We'll bring Ken Page out. And everyone was like, yes, of course. Yeah, of course we'll do this. And so we premiered that at the Hollywood Bowl in October of 2015, which that summer, the Taylor Swift 1989 tour had been out on the road. Rolling Stones had been out on the road. But Billboard named The Nightmare Before Christmas at the Hollywood Bowl as the show of the year.
Oh my gosh.
Which you're just like, I can't, I'm just absolutely blown away by this. I was like, 2 years ago, I was just like, getting M&Ms for bands off the rider and, throwing them the keys to the venue. And now I'm a part of these productions. And it was after that really that I was like, hey, I think there's a business here. I don't know of any other people that are helping build these things. I don't know of any other people that are out here working on them and touring them and doing them. So that's when I started Black Ink. And when we started Black Ink, I have 2 amazing partners, Mike and Alec. We were, talking to different studios and different composers and different IP owners about, hey, have you ever thought about doing a concert with your film or, bringing this music to the stage? And we did that with, we were still doing those shows with Danny and Tim Burton. And then we were doing Nightmare Before Christmas. And then Danny's management also happens to manage Alan Menken.
Oh, geez.
And so they were like, let's make a show with Alan Menken. And so we got to be a part of creating with that same team, the show that still tours. He's actually performing this week in London, a show called A Whole New World of Alan Menken.
Oh my God. Wow. That is incredible.
And we're like, this is insane, and then right after that, we did a deal with William Morris and Justin Hurwitz, and we started representing and going out and touring La La Land in concert, which is also a property that still tours.
Oh, wow. I was going to say all these things are were huge just in and of themselves on their own. And then I can only imagine the interest, the momentum to keep these stories going. I can only imagine. How incredible is that?
Yeah, so like they just kept falling in line and we just became known as the team that was doing this. But at the same time, like I really wanted to be creative. I really wanted to produce. These
Mhm.
shows were allowing me to be creative on stage to an extent. But like I was very passionate about like I have these ideas, I have these things that like I want to bring the vision to life. And
Mhm.
Labyrinth was always one of them. You know, I was always, like I said, such a huge fan of Rocky Horror Picture Show. And I
Yeah.
was just kind of imagine Labyrinth could be something like that.
Yeah.
And in about 2017, 2018, I actually, you know, Black Ink is now a part of the Sony family, and Sony owns the company with our partners, another group called Terrapin Station Entertainment. But
Mhm.
at the time in 2018, I was just like an indie guy and I hadn't really produced much.
Yeah.
And I was able to like talk my way into a meeting at Sony.
Wow.
Uh, and it was like a friend of a friend knew the guy.
Mhm.
And eventually, after like months of asking, he was like, fine, come on the lot. Let me hear what you got.
Yeah.
And so I took him like my idea for Labyrinth and he looked at it and he's like, man, that's actually pretty good. And he said, but you know, you got to go talk to Henson. And but he didn't offer any emails or any contact info for anybody.
Yeah.
So
Hmm.
I was like, okay, fine, I'll go talk to Henson, whatever.
Yeah.
And so I asked some more friends, and somebody knew somebody who knew somebody at Henson,
Mhm.
and I was able to get a meeting with them. And I said, hey, I've already talked to Sony. They told me to talk to you, and they looked at it and they're like, yeah, it's actually a pretty good idea, you know.
Goodness.
And they're like, and all of us then they were looking at me like, now what? And I said, let me figure it out. I'll be back with you in a minute.
Yeah.
You know. And so then we rolled into 2019, and I actually got like sidetracked a little bit in 2019 because I ended up working with David Furnish and Elton John on a showing and on a performance of Rocket Man live in
Mhm.
concert. The
Yeah.
film came out that year, and that fall they wanted to do a live performance of the score with Elton there and Taron Egerton and Giles Martin and Dexter Fletcher, who directed it, and like the whole cast. Bryce Dallas Howard was there, and they
Wow.
wanted to invite all of the Academy, and they were going to kind of use it as like the launching pad for their Oscar campaign.
Hmm.
And long story short, I ended up also being like the promoter of that
Mhm.
show,
Wow.
which is like a crazy story in and of itself. I'd never promoted a show before in my life,
Yeah.
and Elton John helped me get the Greek Theater in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I guess I'm promoting a show with Elton John at the Greek Theater. Like, look, this is
Right. Right.
crazy.
Is this really happening? Yeah.
Yeah. And so really most of my year was spent doing that
Mhm.
single production, right? But what it did was like it really gave me a master's class in producing and creating and working with stakeholders and understanding it. And I had already been learning from Danny's management and from Tim and from Allison. But then
Mhm.
you couple that with, 6 months of working with Elton John.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm ready. So we did that in
Yep.
October of 2019. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna I'm gonna chill for the rest of the year.
Yep.
I'm gonna come back in 2020 and we're gonna like get Labyrinth going.
Yeah. Yep. Oh my
And that did
goodness.
and that did not happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say waiting for the like what was that? Like it was like March 13th. That's when like everything just was, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So sounds like you've had some pretty unbelievable mentors in this field, and your persistence has certainly paid off. That is just incredible. Like you're saying, to go from giving people some snacks and stuff to that. It sounds like I appreciate that too, because I'm certainly an advocate of like you have to start somewhere, and not
Mhm.
be above doing different things to get
Right.
get you to where you want to be. So it sounds like your hard, kind of corny, but I mean your hard work and like persistence really paid off. So what comes after? So the pandemic hits and nobody's doing anything. What was your sort of next steps?
So we're in the pandemic, nobody's doing anything, but interestingly, a lot of people are just like having meetings, taking calls. Like I all of a sudden could get meetings with people that I wouldn't have been able to otherwise,
That's true. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
because nobody was doing anything.
Yeah.
And so it's like if you had an idea or you wanted to like pitch something, it was kind of like it was like open season on that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I had a friend that I had met at a conference several years prior, and he had been working at Red Light Management and now was working. He had started his own company called Terrapin Station Entertainment. His name's Jonathan Shank. He's a phenomenal friend and human. And he had done stuff like Peppa Pig and the Fresh Beat Band, and and he had also been like managing like American Idol winners, and I mean, so and kind of long story on his side, but he started in the business working for Irving Azoff and Azoff Management, and then went over to Red Light. And in that time, in the pandemic, him and I connected, and he said, I have gotten the license for a game show called Deal or No Deal. And he said, I don't know exactly like what to do with it. And I said, okay, well, I'm clearly not doing anything. So why don't you leave it with me and like, let me see if I can come up with a treatment and I can come up with an idea that works for you. And so I worked on it for a couple of weeks and tried to like figure out the model and figure out how we can replicate things and what would be exciting to watch on stage. And I went back to him and I was like, I think I've got it figured out. And I showed him the treatment, and I had created a treatment where basically everything is done on a screen, and we have written a programming session that has like all the different variables, and we used an algorithm to kind of like to randomize the things in the cases. And I went into like a studio with a bunch of different models, and I filmed them all doing like different reactions, and used those as just like our different video clips that we would attach to the case amounts, and which is a long way of saying like I digitized most of the gameplay. And then we created some physical props on stage and wrote a piece for a host who'd come out and host it, and gave them like a script and like a path forward. And then one of the issues was, when you're at a theater or when you're at an arena and you give away money or you give away prizes, and this was one of the problems with the property, like when you do that in those spaces, it has tax implications for the winners.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yeah, it's a good point.
And so like if someone was to win $50,000, they'd have to pay the taxes, or if somebody was to win a car or a stereo or a TV, they'd have to pay like the tax on that prize. And we didn't feel good about like somebody winning a big television and then having to turn around and pay the taxes on it. And so we thought about it like really hard, and I said, you know what, where you do not have those problems is at casinos. So we created the show entirely for rollout at casinos, and it worked phenomenally. It still tours. It's a phenomenal show. It does great business. And it was through that interaction that he was like, hey, would you be interested in like coming with us over to Sony and maybe making a deal and bringing your company over here to Sony with us? And I was like, yeah, we would love that. That was kind of a dream to end up at a studio that has film, television, labels, video games. Incredibly content rich opportunity where I no longer had to like ask friends if they know anybody. I could just, walk down the hall and say, what's up? And so that's what happened. And so we got that deal done the end of 22. So in the beginning of January 23, we became a Sony company. And as soon as like I got on the lot and got my office and got my, my security card, I walked right over to like Sony Pictures to my guy's office and said, hey, what's up? I'm here now, and well, now we're really in a position to like talk about Labyrinth.
Yeah.
And then it just like went like it just like went very quickly from that point.
Wow. Unbelievable. So that's great that you were, patient. You didn't kind of give up on it despite the, huge setback of the gosh darn pandemic and other gigs. That's great that you stuck with it. So how did you get permission to use the Labyrinth film and the characters and all that stuff?
So from there, we put together like kind of a budget and a proposed P&L, and we talked to the studio, and we're like, hey, like let's make a deal.
Mhm.
This is kind of like what we're thinking, what we're seeing out in the market, and what's your appetite for making a deal on this? And they said, oh yeah, we'd be very interested in it.
Mhm.
We're not, the studio would release it into theaters like maybe once a year for a 1 or 2 day run.
Yeah.
But they weren't, they're not really in a position to do much else with it.
Yeah.
Because all Sony had, I believe, is like theatrical distribution rights.
Okay.
And so Henson, who is the partner in that, they had given, stage rights out to somebody else. They had given, they had been looking at, and they've announced now, kind of a reimagining or a sequel. We're not exactly sure, with Robert Eggers attached to it.
Oh, wow. I was not aware of that. That's interesting. Yeah.
I mean, it may or may not happen, right? That's not the first time they've put together a creative team to kind of do something with the title.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, we'll see. I think it has to be the right thing for everybody to move forward. But
Sure.
But they were like, listen, go talk to Henson and see, what they're comfortable with. And so we took the treatment back to Henson, said, we're back, and they're like, oh, great. We'd love to do this. And then all of them were like, oh, well, now you need to go talk to David Bowie's estate. And I'm like, oh, wait, what?
Jeez.
Excuse me?
Yeah. Like, I was going to make a bad joke, a pressure joke. I won't, but go ahead.
Definitely under pressure.
Yeah.
But they couldn't have been nicer,
Wow.
And so I reached out to them. I said, this is what I'm thinking about doing. Like, this is what we want to do. And they were like, go for it. Excellent. Like, they were so supportive. They've been supporting us on social media. They've been like championing the project. And I was like, wow, like everything is like really falling into place here.
Yeah.
And then we went out and we had to make deals with the music publishers, Warner Chappell and Cutting Edge, but they were also like really cool about it. They were like, you want to license this? Okay, fine. Make us an offer. And so we did, and it all came together, and we were able to like get the first 30 shows out last fall. And we're about to embark on another 40 show run here in the US.
Yeah.
And it has exceeded my wildest expectations, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah, I bet. And I think that's a great example of just don't be afraid to ask. The worst that somebody's going to say is no. And you asked and people said yes. And that's, that is incredible. So can you tell, maybe for somebody who hasn't been to one of those shows yet, or maybe isn't like super, super familiar with the Labyrinth, can you kind of describe the show?
Yeah. The show, what our goal and what our ambition is with the show is that you feel that you are both going to a film screening and a concert. And that, we feel very strongly that we kind of like walk this fine line between those two experiences. And so when you go into so many people come in cosplay, it's like one of the most beautiful things.
Yes.
So many Sarahs, so many Goblin Kings. And then, there's some people really go all out. I've seen Blutos and Sir Didymuses at the show.
That's so cool.
It's such a great fan group. And so, you expect to be around a lot of people that have dressed up or, come in masquerade gowns and masks and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's really a phenomenal thing. But when you get into the lobby, we have a backdrop as like, just a free photo op of you in front of like kind of the Labyrinth key art. And Henson was really fantastic with making a deal with us to create some limited edition Labyrinth merchandise items that are only available at the show.
Yes, which I'm sure people are just clamoring to get, which I'm the same way. So that's amazing.
It's been a fantastic response. Like we were very intent on creating some things that like weren't like out there in the Labyrinth universe as licensed merch already.
Yeah.
So we've got you have to have a hoodie. Everybody's got a hoodie, but we have a great hoodie with Jareth on it. We have some great t-shirts with the whole gang on there. But like kind of like really fan favorite items that we have that I thought would be like super popular, but like they are like insanely popular. Is we have a keychain and a patch set for the door knockers.
Oh no! Oh geez, yes.
Yeah. And
that's such a specific, kind of obscure, but that people love that kind of stuff. That is what a genius idea.
And we have a tote bag with the worm, and anything with the worm, just is insane. Like, the worm is like the fan favorite. Everybody loves the worm. Like everybody is like giggling and and really tuned in for that small amount of time that the worm is on the screen.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that funny how that works? And I think that one thing I've learned through doing this podcast is that the origin of this podcast is, long story short, I lost my sister tragically. And so this is kind of like devoted to our childhood nostalgia. And it's amazing how nostalgia really brings people together. It really is a comfort to people. It, builds friendships. It builds relationships. It's something that you can't really describe. So I could see where people would be united together over this movie that's, 40 years old and, kind of a cult classic, and just it bringing them together, and just that sense of comfort is so impactful.
Absolutely. And then one of the most amazing things though really is like when they get into the theater and they get into their seats and the band comes out. So keep in mind that I would say like 90% or more of everyone that comes to the show has never seen Labyrinth on the big screen. But what that also means is that nobody has ever heard the music on anything but their little TV speakers.
That's so true. Yeah, you're so right.
And so right when we go into just like the first notes, people are just like getting chills and they're hooting and hollering and excited because when you bring that music way to the front, and you're hearing it in like concert sound, and it's just like coming over you like a wave, like at any other concert experience. It's just profound, And so that's one of the things that like is really wonderful to witness. Is like in my mind, I know that like most of these people have never heard the music on maybe their headphones, but probably just like their TV speakers. And in the best case situation, maybe you have a really good surround sound at home.
Right.
But even then, the fidelity of the recording, it just doesn't compare to like being blasted with it in the live space.
Yeah, that's a great point. I didn't even think about that, because I think for all those of us who maybe grew up watching it when it kind of came out, I mean, the sound out of a VHS tape and a tube TV was pretty horrendous.
Not great.
In hindsight, certainly not an auditory experience to be had. So that's so true that I'm sure people who are our age or whatever grew up watching it on grandma's TV they could barely hear out of or whatever, to see it not only on a big screen but with like high quality audio must be just indescribable.
It's really, I mean, it's just really cathartic. It happened to me like when we were rehearsing the show for the first time in New York, and I was just hearing it like just in the rehearsal space on the rehearsal monitors. I was getting like, it's silly, but I was getting like emotional about it, and I was just like, oh my god, like this music is fantastic. And And so as we go along in the story, and right away, I mean, you get a huge reaction that first time Bowie shows up, and there's just glitter everywhere, and he's standing in front of the bedroom window and just kind of like smiling at you. The place goes crazy.
I bet. Now, did you have a glitter budget for the production? Is that part of the show? Does glitter get thrown in the audience at various points throughout, or?
So I have to tell you, like, I really wanted to do some more theatrical things. Like, I had some glitter ideas. I wanted to, like, during the Chili Down song, I wanted to throw orange balloons out into the crowd. But interestingly, and as a great lesson in producing, the stage rights for Labyrinth have been granted to another producer who presumably someday might do a stage show.
Okay.
And it was perceived by Henson that if I were to add those elements to my show, it might infringe on the stage rights, which we do not have. We have exhibition and concert rights.
Yeah. Okay.
And so they heavily cautioned against it, and not wanting to upset the apple cart. We were like, you know what I mean? Like, no worries, no issues.
Right.
But of course, in like our most creative minds, we were like, oh, we want to do this, and we want to have like a 13-hour clock on stage, and I want to throw balloons out into the crowd. And it just, just as it played out, we just weren't quite able to do that, just because of like of where all the different rights lay.
Sure. And as the parent of 2 children, I can say that trying to get glitter out of like a couch is a nightmare, let alone a whole venue. So it's probably, in the long run, the cleaning fees and the, I got glitter in my eye, that, that could be interesting.
The theaters hate it too.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. It's like popcorn and stuff is bad enough. It's like, great. Now I have to, like, I'm going to need overtime pay here for all this glitter that's like, in this glued into the seats now.
Pretty much.
Yeah. So what's been the like reaction to people sort of after they've seen, after they've been a part of the experience?
99% of everybody that has come to the show has reacted so positively and so wonderfully to it. One of my greatest joys in life is just talking with people in the lobby. Again, I approached this as a fan first and became a producer through that fandom. And so I can appreciate every moment that they're experiencing, and people are clearly just loving it and enjoying themselves and really just in the moment. And again, as you touched on with the nostalgia thing, it takes them somewhere, it transports them to a time in their life or to a place in their life, or people, you have sisters coming to the show that used to watch it growing up, or mothers and sons, and they're sharing this experience for the first time, and a lot of date night stuff going on, and it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And the reason I say 99% is right, because like you're never gonna make everybody happy.
Sure.
And as a producer, you have to be comfortable with that. But the people that aren't happy, some of it is like, and I feel terrible, but like some people were like, the lights kept hitting me in the eye, and they're just sitting in that, like that one geographic seat that it exists at every concert where that person just gets blasted, and instead of asking an usher, asking somebody to like help them out or move them to a more comfortable seat, they just endure the pain for some reason.
Sure. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah, that's there's the person getting blasted in the eyes by lasers really everywhere. It's like a metaphor for everything, Yeah,
for sure. And then there's there's been like 1 or 2 people that really didn't, they thought they were informed coming to the show, but they ended up not being informed coming to the show. So some people thought it was like a play. I'm like, no,
I see.
It's not a play. Like we're screening the film with a live band. And then, some other people thought it was just a screening, and they're like, oh, it's $50 for a screening. That's crazy. And you're like, no. I mean, there's a whole band, there's a whole experience. So, a lot of it just comes down to, how some people just become uninformed, and that's not intentional, but
Sure.
they look at it and they think they see something that it's not, and then
Mhm.
they show up and they're disappointed. But it's been so very few. I could count on one hand the amount of complaints we got over 30 shows of the first leg of the tour.
Yeah. That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. And what kind of musicians are playing during the show? Is it like a percussionist and a guitar player, or what's sort of the setup?
Our band is fantastic, but the way the band is set up is we have 3 keyboard players and they're all playing synth. And
Mhm.
those synth keys, they're all kind of covering different parts.
Cool. Yeah.
And one of our synth players also doubles on saxophone, which is like the fan favorite. As
Yeah.
soon as that saxophone comes out and he rips the saxophone solo, like
Yeah.
we're in the 80s.
Oh,
You
yes. I was
know,
gonna say, if you love a good sax solo, you are a child of the 80s or 90s for sure. Yes.
100%,
Yeah.
yes. So we have 3 players on keys covering synth parts. Then we have a drummer who is on a drum kit, but also has a few other percussive elements
Mhm.
that she covers. Then we have a bass player and electric guitar. And
Wow.
across those 6 musicians, they cover all the parts in sync with the film. And
Mhm.
they're a phenomenal band. Our
Yeah.
music director, Rose Van Dyne, who plays on keys 1,
Mhm.
and is like really the glue that keeps everything together. We worked with her on putting the band together, and the band is all made up of players and musicians out of the New York Broadway scene.
Wow.
And so they've all been on different on Broadway and off Broadway shows. They have, they've all been gigging 8, 9, 10 shows a week, and they're just like really in tune with this level of musicianship
Yeah.
and with this level of, it's really strict. You
Mhm.
have to be on time every night. And I don't mean on time to work. I mean on time with your music.
Yeah.
We're in sync with the film,
Yeah.
and they're following a click track and they're following a video monitor. But
Mhm.
I mean, but they have to be on it, and there's no real room for them to kind of drift or take liberties within the music. Like, the music is what it is and it needs to be performed like as written.
Yeah.
And so for that level of dedication and for that level of professionalism, really, the Broadway circuit is top tier for those level of players.
Yeah.
And so we got a phenomenal band together with Rose out of New York. I couldn't have been happier with like how it came together. And they're just so pro. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? They roll
Yeah.
in, they understand the assignment, and like they do their job so well.
Yeah.
And they look great doing it. We've rehearsed enough and done enough of these shows to now, they're they feel very comfortable. They look loose while they're playing, which, was important to me, because
Yeah.
when you're watching it, you don't want to see the players like, so rigid and feeling like they're uncomfortable. And so we've really gotten it musically into a wonderful place. And I couldn't be happier, and I couldn't be more proud of the band and how they perform it.
Yeah. Yeah, I can only imagine, and I'm curious to wonder sort of how much they would rock out to. Is it Dance Baby Dance?
Oh yeah, Magic Dance is like
Yes.
the place goes crazy. But
Yeah.
then what we've done is, you might have noticed, is when the end credits roll,
Mhm.
the entire song of Underground plays out from like start to finish.
Mhm.
And because it's the end credits and it's just a totally, the song just totally rocks. The
Yeah.
band gets up and like we just go nuts. They're like ripping solos. They are just
Wow.
like all over the place. And it's really their moment to stand out and shine
Mhm.
and take some liberties, you know?
Yeah.
And the way that they just like jam on that. And there's everything in that song, right? There's saxophone, there's guitar solo, there's bass solo, there's drums. It has like this gospel key thing
Mhm.
going on. And you I don't want to ruin a trivia question for later, but a lot of people don't know this, but in the chorus, in the background vocals for that song is
Mhm.
Sissy Houston.
Wow.
That's right.
Wow. It's funny you bring that up too, because I was watching, I can't remember the name of the YouTube channel, but it was somebody who was made an episode on their channel about seeing this concert, and they encouraged people to please, stay to the end. A lot of people think, oh, here come the credits, like time to leave the theater. And he really said you really have to stay because the end is a pretty incredible experience too.
Yeah, it's one of those things, right? Like we have as people going out to the cinema or going to shows, we have, 80, 90 years of training and like, oh, credits are rolling, I gotta
Yeah.
go,
Mhm.
and it's inevitable, right, with some people, but we really wanted to give everybody an opportunity to stand up and dance and move around and just really groove with the band on what is an incredible song.
Yeah. Man, it's really making me want to go. And I've been looking at the list of all the locations, and you're really going to be like kind of all over the United States. And I know there's a show coming up in May that if we can finagle it, I live in Maine, but it's going to be I think in New Haven, Connecticut, I want to say, or thereabouts.
Yeah,
So I'm
New
hoping
Haven.
we can figure something out to get to that, because my wife absolutely loves the movie, and I'm now a huge fan too. So it sounds like a pretty unbelievable experience to say the least.
No, we love it, and just, yeah, if you can make it, let me know. Like we got you.
No, oh geez, yeah. Well, it would be unbelievable. So we'll keep my fingers crossed that it works out. Got some logistics to figure out.
Sure.
Yeah. But my one last question about the show itself, and then yeah, we'll do a little bit of trivia and nostalgia rapid fire. Is what do you hope the takeaway is for people who go to see this concert, this experience?
I honestly like I think about that a lot. And I really, really, really hope that the takeaway is one, that people think and feel that this was well done and that we weren't trying to take advantage of a fan base and that this was really servicing to people that are fans of it.
Yeah.
And that's honestly like my biggest hope is that people walk away from this as a fan saying that was great. I really enjoyed it. It didn't feel like it was exploitative at all. It didn't feel like it was underproduced. It didn't feel like it was cheap. And
Sure.
and that's, just my highest ambition. And those are like the highest compliments that you can get when people say, because people do have, especially fans, they have high expectations of these universes, and they don't look kindly on people that are trying to exploit their fandom.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really my guiding star, is that we deliver the experience that people are hoping for in the theater and for the evening, because I do think it's like the ultimate compliment, and I hold it as a badge of honor when people are willing to pay their hard-earned money to come out and see something that you did.
Yeah.
It's money's tight. Like, let's just face it, like money gets tight, and it's a lot of logistics for parents and for people to go out, and not every show can be on a Friday or a Saturday,
Right.
And so we have people coming out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Sunday, and I understand that like a lot of times people are having to sacrifice or make decisions in their life to like come out and share that evening with us. And my highest hope and my highest ambition is that they walk away feeling like they got what they paid for. And then, that's what guides the whole thing. I feel like we are, the shepherds of this content and of this universe. And it's our job to make sure that it's presented in an enjoyable and consumable format, and that it services all of our hopes and all of our desires, and people just walk away saying, wow, yeah, like I'm really glad I came tonight.
Yeah. Well, I think your sincerity certainly shows through. And I think because it's such a unique property too, that I think I would assume and hope that people would be like, it must have been somebody who was like a really big fan of this movie and remembers watching it as a kid that wanted to have this, production put forward. I would hope that, and as kind of like an outsider, not in the entertainment industry, I feel like I have gotten that impression already. So hopefully that, that will be what other people are sort of thinking in the back of their minds too, because I think, like you said, it's very obvious that you were a fan first, and this was your sort of brainchild, something that you persisted to have come to fruition. So we'll keep my fingers crossed that people are aware of that, or pick up on it just by the experience itself, and that, again, that this unique property has been brought back to life, I think is pretty awesome. I would hope that fans would be like, oh, thank God, like somebody, there's somebody out there that knows how much I loved this movie and loved it and love it. Thank God somebody brought it back. I think they would be like, grateful.
That's the hope, right? Is that like you touched on something that this wasn't a $1 billion franchise. This
Right.
wasn't, this wasn't Star Wars. This wasn't Harry Potter. This
Right.
was just a thing in a very specific time to like a very specific group of people. Yeah. And it has endured the test of time, and it has continued to roll on and find new fans and continue to find its audience without anything new happening in it for 40 years.
Yeah.
And that was like totally my ambition. I work on other projects, but this is the only project that I'm actually in the fan groups posting as myself, saying, check this out. This is what we're doing, this is, I'm so incredibly proud of this production and all the people that have worked on it and helped make it a reality. But yeah, like it's so interesting. Sometimes I'll be out at shows and someone will come up to me and say, are you John from the fan group? I'm like, yeah, that's me. Are you in there too? Like, this is great.
That's awesome. Oh, that's so cool. Yeah. It's like, you're one of us, man. You're one of us.
Yeah. Like and that is just like the most wonderful sense of community and the most wonderful sense of in a weird way, companionship. That like we've never met, and you've just seen my posts, but we're here together because we enjoy Labyrinth, and we're just like sharing this evening together, and it's a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, I concur. I think the nostalgia, nerds, as I like to say, is a really great group, and very encouraging and supportive, and so I'm glad that you've had a positive experience. And
absolutely.
Yeah. And so on the subject of Jim Henson and such, one thing I wanted to make sure to ask is, what do you think the chances are that A Muppet Christmas Carol could be brought to a concert-like experience?
Well, I'm very happy to tell you that it is a concert experience.
Are you serious?
And it, for the past 2 or 3 years, has been being performed at symphony halls and symphony spaces with a full orchestra. And so you just need to kind of be on the lookout, but A Muppet Christmas Carol in concert is absolutely a thing.
Okay.
And it's booked by Disney.
Okay.
Because Disney now owns all of the Muppets.
Right.
And so it's booked out as a Disney property.
Okay.
But it is very popular, and it does make the rounds at Christmas. So just keep your eyes peeled, because it is definitely a thing.
Okay. Wow. My God, my dreams are coming true. I need to pay more closer attention, I guess. Okay, good. That's good to know, because
it's real. It's happening.
That's another thing that I will be like, why is that woman sobbing in the back row? It's like, because this is the soundtrack to this movie is incredible.
And the soundtrack to that movie is incredible, and can we just a round of applause for Michael Caine? Like, being like,
I know, best Scrooge ever.
Yeah, he's like, I know I'm acting with Muppets, but I'm going to play this thing straight as an arrow.
Yeah, love it. Oh my God, I know his performance is just a textbook for like just best acting ever. So where can people find more information about the Labyrinth in concert?
So we have a website, which is labyrinthinconcert.com. We are currently, in terms of social media, only represented on Instagram, which is at Labyrinth in Concert, because quite frankly, it's all I have time to keep up with.
Yeah, really.
As I manage it myself. And so if you DM that account, you're DMing me.
Mhm.
And I try to get back to everybody, but there's a lot of people that want to chat. And so,
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
and
Full-time
then,
job right there.
and then our company, blackinkpresents.com. And if anybody out there wants to find me, I'm on LinkedIn. That's my only social media account, and LinkedIn at John Kinsner.
Okay, awesome. Well, I'll make sure to put that into the show notes so that people can easily track things down. And then, yeah, so I thought maybe we could do a few kind of trivia questions. One you actually already answered, so we'll skip that one. And then, no, it's okay. That's, again, just a testament to like fan first. Like, this isn't just like a, going through the motions thing for you. Like, you really know the film back and forth. So that's good. And then we'll end with some nostalgia rapid fire. So, and these are just about the kind of the movie in general. The first question, the first question is, who provided the voice of Hoggle in the movie? Was it A, Brian Henson, B, Jim Henson, or C, Frank Oz?
All great choices and intended to be very confusing. However, the voice of Hoggle was provided by the younger Henson, Mr. Brian Henson.
That is correct.
Was also a puppeteer, one of several puppeteers on Hoggle. And little known fact, Hoggle's face was controlled by, it was either 16 or 18 different animatronic motors.
Oh my goodness, that is unbelievable. I mean, the patience that these people must have had to put this together, I think would be enough to drive like typical people, like just like forget it. Like I can't. I can't.
This film was, this process was all about patience. If you've seen the clips of David just waiting for the magician with the crystals to get it right, like the man is a saint. Yeah, that was another thing that person was saying. This YouTube channel is watching is talking about how this magician person was basically like behind David Bowie for like 5 hours a day. Like must have just like must have been very uncomfortable. Could you imagine? Yeah, I'm sure they became very close. All right, let's see. Who provided the baby noises in the magic dance sequence? Was it A, the little actual baby, the actor who played the baby, who I learned may have become a puppeteer at one point eventually, B, David Bowie, or C, Jim Henson? Again, great question. So in the filmmaking process, it was found that Toby, the baby, was not able to make noises on command and do it at a level that was sufficient for what they were looking for in the film. Toby is the son of Brian Froud, who was the creator of all of the goblins. He did all of the animations and he did all of the design for all of the goblins. And he in his own right is a phenomenal artist. So if you're not familiar with the world of Brian Froud and his goblins, I highly suggest you go check it out. But to your question, who provided the baby noises, it was actually David Bowie. Nice. See, for the people that are listening, these were not given to John in advance, and so the depth of his knowledge is, I think, should be quite apparent. And we're only 2 questions in, so kudos to you, John. Let's see. Next question. Jennifer Connelly took lessons for what in preparation for her role? Was it A, puppeteering, B, ballroom dancing, C, public speaking? Wow. Right after a compliment, I'm going to fully admit that I'm going to be guessing on this one. Hey, that's okay. And the guess I'm going to make is, this was Jennifer's first major film role. She was only 14 at the time, but she had been acting. So I'm going to guess that she took lessons in ballroom dancing for this role. That is correct. That is correct. See, even guessing, your process of elimination is commendable, and that is correct. So she felt like, it's kind of a fish out of water with this dance sequence. She felt like she was a terrible dancer, so she was able to work out getting dancing lessons. And I mean, she did not look, ill-equipped by any means from when I've watched the movie. So, and I would know because I'm an expert in ballroom dancing. Actually, I'm not, but she did a great. No, that's not one of my talents. But she did a fantastic job. And I can't believe 14. My God, that is. I mean, what a talent. I've seen clips of her talking about that scene and just how wonderful David was and how she really feels that's her song because he was singing it to her.
Yeah.
And it's really touching to hear her talk about it.
Yeah. And yeah, has she perchance like gone to see the concert? Do you know? Or
To my knowledge, no.
okay.
And we're not sure. We're hoping that she comes to LA,
Yeah.
but we didn't want to reach out to her and say, hey, come to the show, because honestly, like it's hard to get in touch with her first of
Sorry.
all, and to break through.
Yeah.
And you're never sure how like artists feel about their work. Like she's talked about Labyrinth, but
Mhm.
we didn't want to put her in a position where we felt like we were trying to exploit her by
Yeah.
bringing her down to the show.
Yeah.
And so our greatest hope is that naturally she'll hear about it and she'll come enjoy herself and she can just be herself. We
Yeah.
didn't want her to feel like, on the spot or anything.
Yeah. Well,
You know what I
that's very respectful. Maybe she would like to just like put a hat on and just see people's responses or, not have to, be a part of some conversation or whatever.
Totally. I think so many producers, like their first instinct is like, let's get them down here and let's see if they'll do an intro and like let's see if like we can market the fact that they're going to be here. But
Yeah.
honestly, like, it's LA and we got a great response in LA. And honestly, like if she just came and enjoyed herself
Mhm.
and just like did her thing and we found out after the fact that she was there, I would be so happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. Again, I think that just as a testament to like this is about the love of a film, not trying to,
Yeah. Yeah.
be friends with a celebrity or something like that, like just
Totally.
that's very, very, very respectful. All right. We'll skip the owl question. The CGI owl question. So the last trivia question is, besides David Bowie, who was considered for their lead role? Was it A, Mick Jagger, B, Paul McCartney, or C, Keith Richards?
So there were actually several pop stars considered for the role. I think of the three that you mentioned, Mick Jagger is the answer in this case.
That is correct.
However, Michael Jackson and Sting were also approached for the role.
Yeah.
And David Bowie ended up being the fourth choice and the one that was available.
Mm. Yeah.
Sting didn't get it. I think Michael Jackson, I can't remember why he turned it down, but I think it had something to do with his schedule. But Michael Jackson, as we all know, was like a huge fan of like filmmaking and doing,
Yes.
and I think he had worked with George Lucas
Mhm.
before, because George Lucas, what we didn't talk about, George Lucas was the producer of this film. And
Wow, for some reason, I don't think I knew that.
so not only was George Lucas the producer, but he actually personally did the final edit and cut of the film, which is a very fascinating story because there's an entire storyline about Sarah's mother running away with an actor from her work. She was a Broadway stage actress. And the whole reason Sarah's in turmoil is because like her mother has ditched them and run away with an actor from her stage production named Jared. And you only see a little tiny glimpse of that storyline in the very beginning when the camera's first panning across Sarah's room and you see her diary is open. In that diary is a press clipping from a newspaper article that explains about her mother running away with Jared.
Wow.
And in that article, do you know who Jared is? And there's a picture of him. It's David Bowie.
Okay. I was gonna say I can picture like the newspaper thing in this room, but I can't, or in her room, but I can't picture like what's in the photo.
Yeah, in that very first pan across Sarah's room, you actually see everything that she encounters in the labyrinth. all of the characters are already in her room. There's a statue of the Goblin King. There is the press clipping in her diary of her mother running away with the actor. And it kind of frames out the story. But what didn't make it into the final cut was the bits about Sarah's mother running away.
Interesting.
Probably
Wow.
felt a little too PG-13 for what ultimately ended up as a PG show.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was thinking too that, maybe Michael Jackson didn't end up taking up the role either because he's too busy working on Captain EO for, for Disneyland and Epcot with
Which
George
was
Lucas.
also George Lucas production.
Yeah. Right around that time. So that's too funny. Interesting. See, very, very knowledgeable here about the Labyrinth. I feel like I've learned a lot already. So that's remarkable.
Just a huge fan of this process and of this film and how it all came together. And then just like a couple of tidbits here.
Mhm.
If you watch the credits, Maurice Sendak is credited in the film for having ultimately contributed to the story. And the story with that is that Maurice Sendak had written a very similar story and published it. And he felt that Jim Henson had stolen that story to make it into a film.
Oh.
And Maurice Sendak actually sued the production while they were in production. And the way that they got out of that lawsuit was by giving Maurice Sendak, who of course we all know from Where the Wild Things Are, they credited him in the film.
Wow. Man. The layers of the stuff with this story is just keeps going much like a labyrinth.
Okay, I have a trivia question for you. Last one.
Okay. Oh boy. Okay.
The scene where Sarah reunites with Toby, where there are all the staircases going in every direction.
Yes.
Is a painting by Salvador Dali, B. Andy Warhol, C. MC Escher.
For some reason I went through like a weird MC Escher phase in high school, I think, and I had posters hanging up on my wall in my bedroom. So and just based off of that, the staircases especially, I'm gonna say MC Escher.
That's correct.
Okay. I was so nervous because there's a lot of things that I feel pretty knowledgeable about, and but this one's a little tricky. So, I can breathe easy now. Okay.
Got it.
All right. So I think to wrap up, one thing I try to do again with people, because my podcast is very heavily focused on the 80s and 90s and a little bit of the early 2000s, is I like to ask what I call nostalgia rapid fire questions. And this was inspired by everyone's favorite TV host, Oprah Winfrey, who used to ask celebrities just questions that are completely unrelated to like movies that they made or music that they put together, just general like everyday kind of questions. So I think it helps listeners kind of get to know the guests in kind of a fun, lighthearted way. And so I think we're pretty close in age. So I think I'll have some fun with your answers here. Let's see, what record, tape, or CD did you listen to so much that you wore it out? So you think back to like high school age maybe, or like middle school age when you're kind of like younger. What music did you like just play until it didn't work anymore?
So I would probably one of the most influential albums, especially of my youth, when I was a young kid and I was first collecting music and first kind of starting to consume music, was Green Day Dookie.
Nice. I remember that too. I think that came out, I want to say, in 94, and that was a huge record. Oh my God, that was like everywhere.
Yeah. As an 11-year-old, I felt like I was so grown up.
Yeah. I know, and they're still going strong to this day. I mean, they're still making music, and
isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it's unbelievable.
Totally
good stuff. Yeah. All right. This is one of my favorite ones. Which sitcom from the 80s or 90s could you still to this day watch on repeat?
I love this question. because to this day, I still love watching Cheers.
It's a good comfort show.
It's a great comfort show. And like, the evening of their final broadcast, my mom, my dad, me and my brother, we were all in the living room, and we just felt like it was like something significant, and I can't believe I remember this, but like, I believe like they actually had like a live commentator. I think it was like Bob Costas or something. Did like an intro and was like, oh, we're in for a great night. Here's the final episode. And of course, it was like one of the last shows that was filmed like in front of an actual studio audience.
Right.
And so it was really like an event. It was this great, I love Cheers. And I love the fact that they did it at a studio in front of an audience, and like the stakes were real, and it was, it's this level of acting that we don't totally get to appreciate today.
Yeah.
Outside of like Broadway.
Right. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I think that's one of the highest rated last episodes of a TV show, aired. I mean, millions and millions and millions of people watched that last episode, and that
I think
just doesn't happen anymore. Yeah.
I think it was like just as cable television was starting to pick up steam. So most people still only watched ABC, NBC, CBS at the time. I know that we didn't have cable at that time. And so the final episode of Cheers, it was like you were losing a family member. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do on Thursday nights now?
Yeah, really. So true. I know there was no other way to watch this. If you missed it, you missed it,
That was it.
Yeah. Those are the days. All right. So we'll do two more here. What was your favorite cereal to eat as a kid?
My favorite cereal, because like we, as a mom, you can appreciate this. We weren't allowed to have it very often, was Fruity Pebbles.
Nice.
I loved that all the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, and at the time they were aligned with Pebbles and Bam Bam from the Flintstones, and I just loved the color. I was just so drawn to like the color coordination of the box. And I was just totally hypnotized by the colors in the bowl.
Oh yeah,
I was like, oh my God, this is amazing.
I know. It's so true. Yeah, we always liked well, not so much me, but like there were just so many like sugary cereals that were just like such a like Lucky Charms. It's like, oh my God, this is like the colors and so cheerful, and there's a toy in here. This is great.
Oh yeah. And then runner up was Boo Berry.
Oh no. Excellent choice. Yes, definitely kind of an off the beaten path sort of cereal, but good stuff. Yes,
I like the character, and I was like, oh, he's a ghost. This is cool.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I have a friend of mine. That's become a good friend. He's been a guest on the show many times. We've talked about how somebody, especially like kids cereals, especially like in the 80s, was a big like kind of these people that were like kids trying to steal the cereal from the the mascot or whatever of the of that actual cereal is just I don't know, just like too funny. It's like now that would like so not happen, but kids were like little kids always trying to steal somebody's treats or
No, it's true. Funny. Like the cereal wars of the 80s and 90s were fascinating.
Yes, I know that could be a whole topic of a show. That is for sure. That's a very good point. All right, so my last question, kind of a more I don't know, serious kind of question, I guess, or sentimental question. If you could go back in time to your childhood or adolescence, what would you do first?
It's a fascinating question. If I could go back in time, and do something, I would probably like, buy stock in Google or something like that, something, or maybe like Back to the Future 3 it and take myself like a sports almanac.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Smart. Yes. Yep.
I know. I mean, I think that like, a lot of people, you've done things in life that maybe you'd like a redo on, but in my case, like, I've learned a lot from like the mistakes I've made, and they've been very informing on how I've like, moved my life forward and developed like who I am today. And
Mhm.
so I don't really have like a lot of like personal regret or anything like that.
Yeah.
I mean, and then there's like the sentimental things like, oh, I'd go back and I'd like spend a day with my grandparents who aren't with us anymore,
Yeah.
something like that. But I think if I was ever given that opportunity, it would be something that, was sweet or innocent and, or just fun, or,
Yeah.
like I said, like buy stock in, the IPO for some .com, or,
Right.
like I said, sports almanac and gambling. I mean, it'd be great to, go to the sports book as a 12-year-old and say, put it all,
Right.
put it
Yeah.
all on the Cowboys or whatever it is,
Yeah. Yeah. I think somebody said one time they would buy like .com domains, and then
Yeah.
be able to sell those for like crazy outrageous prices. So yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. There's a lot of different directions you can go with that
Okay,
question.
so there's maybe one thing. There's
Okay.
maybe one thing I would go back in time and tell myself not to do. And
Sure.
that's friggin' open up a stupid Columbia House account.
Oh, geez. Yes, you did.
Oh, I did.
Oh my God. So what are the ramifications of that now?
I don't know. I'm probably still paying for it,
Oh my God.
And what's crazy about it is I was like 12 or 13 years old,
Yeah.
and you were for some reason allowed to get into a contract with
Yeah, I was
Columbia.
gonna say that. Yeah, really. If you're a kid, they let you do that?
100%. Like they did not care. They're like, they would send all these like record covers as like stamps, and you would like lick the stamp and put the stamp down, and like, these are the records I want back in the mail. And they're like, oh yeah, like the first 7 is just like a penny, and then you have to buy 20 more at like $30 a piece or something.
God.
Yeah. And then like they started showing up in the mail, and my mom was like, what is going on here?
I don't think I've ever actually talked to somebody who actually had a Columbia House. I mean, we were all aware of it, but I don't think I've ever spoken with somebody that actually had like
No,
had a contract with Columbia House. Wow.
I did. Yeah. As a
That's
kid,
amazing.
like, totally signed up, and just like, because, I got like a little, like as a lot of parents do, they're like, oh, we're going to go open you a bank account and you're going to put your birthday money in it. And
sure, yeah.
At like 12 or 13 years old, I got like a checkbook, and I was like, yo, it's time.
Those commercials are so convincing. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
And I think it's like it probably like is right around the time that movie Blank Check came out. So I was like, this is life. Like we're doing this.
Right. Yes, I would like a water slide out of the top floor of my house too. Yes. Oh my goodness. So, I mean, I think forget all of your other accomplishments. I think, forget Sony, forget Disney, forget Jim Henson. I mean, the fact that you had a Columbia House account, I mean, that's really your claim to fame. I mean, that's impressive.
It was pretty special. Like, I definitely was like one of the cool kids because I had like all the albums, and they were like mailed to me, and people were like, oh, how are you doing this?
Yeah. Oh my God, that is too funny. Oh my goodness. Do you remember like any of the albums do you remember acquiring because of Columbia House?
Oh yeah. So like, as a kid, I was like totally, I was getting like albums like growing up in rural Colorado that like we couldn't get. So like, like Kid and Play, Crisscross, pretty much anything late 80s hip hop. And then I was like, I was really into like Aerosmith and Led Zeppelin and the Rolling Stones. So it was like this great combination of like classic albums. That's actually where I got the Green Day Dookie album, was from my Columbia House membership. And then I had like Kid and Play, and like I said, a bunch of just like phenomenal late 80s, early 90s hip hop and R&B that like we weren't exposed to in rural Colorado. They weren't on the radio there, and I would see them on MTV, and that would be like the only place I'd see them. And even then, it was like late at night. I wasn't supposed to be watching, and I'd be like, "Oh, this stuff is dope." And then when that film House Party came out, I was like the biggest Kid and Play fan.
Yeah,
I was like, "Yo, this is so
they were huge."
Yeah. And I was like, I gotta have everything. I gotta consume this content, and and then. And then and that led into like I would get Tupac and Biggie and I had like Grandmaster Flash and you name it. Like I was getting it.
Wow. Well, thankfully, I mean, at least you put that Columbia House membership to good use.
Yeah,
That's true. That's the one,
it like ruined my credit till I was 30, but it was worth it.
Oh my God, that's too funny. You should change your what is it, like that headline on LinkedIn or whatever is like, experienced producer, blah, 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 blah. And one of the original Columbia House members,
Debtors, Columbia House debtor.
there you go. Perfect. Oh man. Well, it was a pleasure to have you on the show. Congratulations on all of your success and this amazing concert series that you've put together. If worst comes to worst, I'll somehow try to view it online, but hopefully I'll be able to see it in person, and hopefully the listeners of the show will be able to see it in person too. So anytime you want to come back, talk anything nostalgia, you're always welcome. But thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. This was an absolute blast. Like I had so much fun, and I just love talking about this stuff. So I'll definitely come back.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Pop Culture Retrospective Podcast. And I hope you will join me next time as we take yet another look at a fascinating facet of the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s in memory of my sister. Until then, be kind, be safe, and hold on to your memories.
Thank you for tuning into my mama's podcast and the memories of Auntie Rebecca.